You said 2025 will be the year of robots. It's either genius or it's capriciousness, and I don't think we know yet still.
I think I'm going to give myself a passing grade here.
Yeah, I think you're being a little too easy on yourself for this one.
We were wrong.
Boop.
You're listening to the Startup Podcast. This is a Reacts episode.
Hey, I'm Chris Sard.
And I'm Yaniv Bernstein.
Sad news, this is our last episode of the season. We've been going all year long. Unlike other shows, we haven't even really had breaks, or we haven't had any pauses. We've had nothing. So we are ready to have a break, Yaniv and I, head into Christmas, drink some pina coladas and relax. And so this will be the last show of the season. We don't know exactly when we'll be back next year, but stay tuned to all our socials, all our channels, and we will give you news and insights about the next season, next year, as things progress. But to celebrate the end of the season and the impending end of the year, we want to go back through our predictions that we made at the beginning of the year and grade ourselves, pass, fail, sort of maybe somewhere in the middle, see if we were right, we were wrong, or if we were crazy wrong, and see how good we are at prognosticating about the future here on the show. So all of that and much more on this week's show. Let's jump straight into it. You know, if this is going to be either thrilling or embarrassing, we'll see. We'll soon find out.
If it's embarrassing for us, it's thrilling for our listeners. Everybody likes to see the others fail, hey?
We'll alternate between us, Yaniv. Your first prediction here from the predictions episode at the start of the year was that functional AGI will effectively be reached through capability creep. Quoting here, the question of whether
it is true AGI becomes more and more academic because they're just capable of so much and so many things that humans can do.
You predicted that would happen this year. What do you think? Did that happen?
Well, I mean, I guess probably not. I think what's true is that the question of AGI itself and its definition has become kind of so loose and such marketing speak that even the discussion of whether something is AGI or not has become a bit masturbatory, which is one of my favorite words, by the way. So, yeah, have we achieved AGI? I don't know. We passed the Turing test years ago. These things can be incredibly smart. They can also be incredibly dumb. Have they taken as many jobs as we thought they would? Probably not. Are there a lot of things that an AI agent can't do? Absolutely. So I guess if I had to put my hand on my heart and say, have we achieved AGI this year through progressive incremental improvement? I would say no. But I think that the bigger part of the story, and where I was right, is where I said the question of whether it is true AGI becomes more and more academic. I think that is true. The question of AGI is just not interesting anymore. We are now looking at these LLMs and other AI tools as just that, as tools, right? And the question isn't, is it AGI? The question is it useful? And so in that sense, I think that part of the prediction came true.
Yeah, so basically this was one of my predictions as well. And so let's deal with both of them together. I said we have line of sight to AGI. We'll basically hit that this year and turn our attention to superintelligence. So here, sort of echoing what you said a little bit, look, I think the horizon keeps moving. Our expectations, the Overton window keeps moving in terms of what we want these LLMs to do. But I think what really is clear to me 12 months later is that the rate of change seems to have slowed. The incremental improvements we're getting from version 4 to version 5 of ChatGPT, for example, it feels more incremental to me. And at the time when we recorded the first episode of the year, we were sort of breathless. We were like, oh my God, these massive improvements, if this continues throughout the year, what the hell is going to happen? And I think that's the big takeaway here, is that it feels like the changes have been a bit more incremental this year. It's also clear, as you've said, that Sam Altman and others are sort of are throwing this term away. They're saying, look, there's not going to be an AGI moment. There's not going to be some moment where it's like, we don't have AGI, we do have AGI. It's going to be this incremental creep of new features and capabilities. And as you also said, these things are incredibly smart in some ways, but incredibly dumb in others. I wrote a whole post actually recently about the 5 reasons why ChatGPT is not going to save you. It's really centered around the fact that these large language models lack context, either because you haven't given it to them or they don't know how to differentiate between historical context and contemporaneous context. They lack intuition. They don't tend to make intuitive leaps about what you're really asking or what are the first principles and how to reject certain questions that are irrelevant or reframe questions. They lack precision and rigor. They'll often, dump a list of things, but the list is very rarely I find MECE, right, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And they lack true insight. They sort of, if you give them a generic prompt, they give you a generic answer, and they don't dig deeper into the underlying assumptions and premises of your question. So, they're very, very smart if you give them exactly the right prompt and exactly the right context, and give them, the right kind of problem, that they can do a lot. But AGI, I think, Yaniv, we were both a little overestimating that.
Yeah, I think if we really want to grade ourselves impartially and strongly, we'd say we missed on this prediction. And, I think the way I would update my view of what is AGI, rather than centering it on the capabilities of the tool, I would center it on the impact it has in the real world and on the economy. And I would say, have AI tools reached a level of intelligence where they have basically unleashed a new massive wave of intelligence in the economy that changes how the world works? No, they have not. I think that is without question. There are some very, very successful companies that are building good businesses using AI, but we're not at that stage. And I think if we haven't got that impact, we can't really say that this thing is intelligent enough to do a huge amount of useful work. And so, yeah, I think we were wrong.
Boop. Yep. This is when Ethan and Justin put a big stamp fail. All right.
Okay, so here's your next prediction, Chris. The Trump administration will roll back antitrust enforcement. You said all of that antitrust stuff is going to go out the window. Trump's administration is going to be all about American companies growing bigger, faster. What do you reckon? Were you right?
I think I was right on this one. I think the Google case basically got thrown out with a slap on the wrist. Nothing is in the headlines right now of any meaning or merit. And I don't think the freeze on action is in place anymore. Related to my next prediction that we're going to talk about, Google is adding AI to Chrome without any concern about bundling. Microsoft is, moving as fast as it can to bundle everything it can into Office and what have you. And so, no, I don't. I think this prediction was basically right.
I would say definitely in terms of vibe shift. Do companies think about, is what we're doing anti-competitive? Do we need to worry about the government? Or are we just going to go all out and start to suck up to Donald Trump, position our work as part of some geopolitical great game with China, and then just let her rip? Absolutely. The way you see companies behaving is not accordant with companies that are worried about not exceeding the bounds of their monopoly powers. So yeah, whether it's Trump, the Trump administration, yes, the Google lawsuit, the ruling there, the remedy was pretty amazing. That was from an independent judge. It wasn't appointed by Donald Trump. So that could have just been kind of luck, but it is part of a general vibe of these companies are pretty much being allowed to do what they want. And their main measure of their success is just how big and powerful they become. So yes, I think, Justin, Ethan, we're giving this one a big tick.
Pass.
Pass.
Yeah, I think we both failed the first one because I also had the AGI this year. But here's our first win. All right, good news. Yaniv, your next prediction was Google reemerges as AI leader. The quote here is, I feel like we come back in 12 months and there's a better than even odd that we're like, wow, Google's really running away with this. What do you think, Yaniv? Were you right?
I think I'm going to give myself a passing grade here. I don't think, has Google reemerged as an AI leader? Yes, I would say yes. Their Google Cloud business is doing incredibly well. It's establishing itself as one of the premier clouds for AI workloads. Gemini is going well. It is still one of the leading frontier models. Google AI search summaries are becoming more and more useful. And I think most importantly of all, Chris, Google's search volumes continue to go up. So predictions that AI was going to be the end of Google's search business have turned out to be very, very premature. And so Google has come out of this looking really good. At the time of recording, I believe the stock price is up about 70% since the beginning of the year. So I would say, yes, Google has reemerged as an AI leader. They were caught flat-footed. I would still say they're moving a bit too slowly, but I feel like they are very credible now in AI. Do we say, and to quote myself, wow, Google's really running away with this? Not quite, but I'd say I would nearly roll this prediction over into next year. I still feel that sooner or later they will achieve this true liftoff and be the preeminent AI company. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the year we were like, wow, is Google going to survive this? It's a reshuffling of the deck. Is search going to collapse? As you just went through, it's Google is looking very, very strong. If we believe the rumors, it looks like Gemini is actually going to power the new Siri. So if that ends up being true, that's going to be a big win for Google. Recently, there was a big spike in Google's stock when I can't remember the exact news. I think it was the earnings call and various things, but it was sort of became really apparent that Google is got sure footing here and is going to crush the AI cycle. And so there was just a huge spike actually in the Google stock. I know because I have a big chunk of it. And I think it's
Congratulations.
fair to say that they're positioned to be one of the winners moving forward. And they have, all of their alphabet portfolio of bets from robotics through to, cloud through to productivity software and all their devices. They're in a very good position. So yeah, as you said, I don't think they're running away with it just yet, but they're doing very, very
But
well.
they're back, right? They are back and they are solid. And any narrative that Google was maybe going to be, the roadkill of this generation, I think that has evaporated. And then the only question is, can they build on their current momentum and really separate themselves from the pack?
Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be an exciting year for Google coming up.
So your next prediction, Chris, still in the world of Google that you touched on earlier, is that Chrome was going to integrate AI directly. What you said was we're going to start to see browsers, especially Google browsers, with AI baked in.
I think this is definitely a pass. Google has added Gemini to Chrome. And more importantly, perhaps, that we're seeing new browsers with AI baked in, including Atlas from OpenAI, and there's one from Claude from Anthropic, right?
That's right. So I think this prediction is a pass if you center it on Google, but I think that broader prediction that we're going to start to see browsers with AI baked in. We talked about this just a few weeks ago, Chris. AI really reigniting the browser wars that were dormant for 10, 15, 20 years. They are back. We've got Perplexity's browser. We've got OpenAI's ChatGPT browser. Like you said, we've got Chrome with AI baked in, with Gemini baked in. And so the idea that AI and browsers are a good combination, I think that has been very much borne out this year with some fairly intense competition.
Yeah, and we're going to do predictions episode next year, but I think this will continue to play out. We're gonna see how AI and the browser go together like peanut butter and jelly. But I think we'll also see how AI might disintermediate the browser, and you never have to open one up. So we'll see how this plays out. All right, big tick for us. Pass. Let's go on to the next one. Yaniv, you said affordable household robots will start to appear. 2025 is going to be the year of robots. A very capable robot for sub $10,000. A moderately well-off family could buy its own robot. What do you think? Is this a pass?
Well, it's interesting. So, a company called 1X actually had a pretty big news cycle. We were going to talk about this last week, Chris, but we didn't get around to it. They announced a household robot called the Neo. And the Neo is, yeah, basically designed to stack and unstack the dishwasher and do the vacuuming and the mopping and get you a drink and that sort of stuff. And it has been announced for pre-order to buy it for $20,000 or as a subscription for $499 a month. So I think overall, this feels fairly right. There are a couple of things to note. I said it should be sub $10,000. This is $20,000, but also that subscription plan, $500 a month, is $6,000 a year. Could a moderately well-off family have its own robot? Absolutely. That is a very affordable price for people with a little bit of spare cash. The other question is it very capable? And, I think the X1 Neo is moderately capable. There are lots of videos of it looking fairly derpy, but I guess that's sort of how it is with robots. But it is actually useful and it will continue to accelerate in pace. So again, Chris, I don't know if we're marking ourselves too easily, but that feels like, yeah, a capable robot for a price that a middle-class family can afford.
Yeah, I think you're being a little too easy on yourself for this one. You said 2025 will be the year of robots. That suggests to me there'll be 2 or 3. You said there'll be less than 10K. Technically, it's 20K, but yes, you're right. You can get one for 6K a year on subscription. It's also not really AI, and it's also not really here. Firstly, it's not really here in 2025. It's not really AI. Most of it is teleoperated, I think. Which, by the way, I wanted to talk about this last week. All the mainstream media that's covering this story is like, oh, it's how creepy. Who wants a real person to be able to look into their house? It's like, what a stupid point. It's when you have if you have a maid or a house cleaner or any kind of laborer helping you out, they're looking inside your house. It's what a dumb insight. Anyway, it's teleoperated, so a lot of the behaviors it's doing is not actually AI. Although I imagine there's some sort of like AI assistance, and there are a few little tasks that it can do on full autopilot. And also the capability is pretty weak. This is sort of a recurring theme in AI at the moment. There's the promise and then there's the reality, right? Tesla self-driving, not really self-driving. The humane pin, not really as intuitive as they promise, right? The Rabbit Hour 1, no, not really. Apple Intelligence, I don't think so. So, this thing, there's been videos of it trying to close the dishwasher and it fumbling around. It's very jank. I would say 2025 has not been the year of robots. I would say this one is probably a fail.
That's harsh. Fair enough. I still think it is notable that we are now entering the stage of household humanoid robots. I also think it's wrong, Chris, to conflate the robotics story with the AI story. These are two separate technologies that are, yes, better together, and they're going to be incredibly powerful together. But to your point, this robot is teleoperated. So yes, it's not about AI, but this prediction was not about AI. It was a prediction about robotics. And yeah, I think this is a sign that robotics is something that is progressing, and that I listened to an interview with the founder of of 1X, who is producing this Neo robot. And it was very clear that he presented this as basically a large-scale data gathering exercise, that the point of selling these robots cheap, getting them into people's houses and teleoperating them is to gather lots and lots and lots and lots of data about people's houses and how they use robots that will then be used to train an AI. And in that sense, it is a similar playbook to what Tesla's been doing with full self-driving, which to your point may or may not be the best playbook, but that's clearly the game here, is that this is nearly bootstrapping its way to an AI robot without really pretending that it is one.
I actually think their strategy is the right one. I really, it's classic iterative, agile execution. What is the MVP? The MVP is a teleoperated robot. That is brilliant. People are poo-pooing it and saying it's not really AI and whatever. I agree with you. This is really smart. Get something into homes, start building brand awareness, teleoperated first if you have to, collect all the data. I think this is exactly right. But I was sort of hanging my hat or hanging the score on 2025 will be the year of robots, especially, ones you can buy and use. I think that's probably a miss, but there are many, many robots that are on the verge of coming out, some really great videos and demos. We'll see, maybe 2026, 2027 may end up being the year of the robot.
It's only November, Chris. You never know. You never know.
You never know.
Your next prediction is that US tech dominance will accelerate under Trump. Your quote was Google,
OpenAI, Microsoft, NVIDIA need to win the AI race, period, full stop.
So I think this follows on nicely from your prediction about antitrust. How do you feel you did there?
Yeah, well, again, I think the growth at all costs, the idea that Trump is going to give the tech companies a wide berth, he's going to give the Apples of the world, hall passes from the tariffs. He's going to not emphasize antitrust enforcement. That's all been true. They've been allowed to accelerate and focus on growth and execution. I believe NVIDIA's had some amount of ability to sell some of their chips to China, which has allowed them to grow there. And so, this is all on track and on train. At the same time, the US is not running away with it. It's not accelerating away from the rest of the world, especially if you think about China. China's EVs with their self-driving capabilities, their, home cleaning robots, their AI models, and Jensen Huang has recently been quoted as saying that China's a nanosecond behind us. And so the tech dominance hasn't accelerated away from China, but it has continued under Trump. So yeah, I would say this is sort of neither a pass nor a fail. It hasn't accelerated away, but it has maintained its dominance for now.
I mean, looking at the prediction, right, you talked about Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, and NVIDIA needing to win the AI race. And the interesting thing is, if you look, again, stock prices are very imperfect, but Google stock price up over 50% since the start of the year, Microsoft over 20%, NVIDIA over 40%. OpenAI's valuation has gone through the roof on the private markets. these companies are winning some sort of race, right? Like, but I think what's happened here is it's more like the Magnificent Seven in the US have won the tech race against everybody else, right? The concentration of power in these really big companies is increasing. And so they are very powerful. But to your point, Chris, and I agree, it's not clear that they're winning what is a multi-dimensional 3D chess type of a race against China. And, yes, these are the most highly valued companies in the world, the most highly valued companies in history. They are investing more than anybody else. So economically, they are so powerful. And technologically, they're doing very well. But it is not clear that they have, to your point, Chris, technological dominance over smaller, scrappier, more efficient players, primarily coming out of China.
The race is still hot. It reminds me of that alternative history show, For All Mankind, where it posits, hey, what happens if Russia landed on the moon first? And it suggests that the space race would have continued to the benefit of all of humanity, actually. Our technology adoption accelerates, power generation and so on. There's sort of this healthy co-opetition with Russia, and actually humanity is better off for it, spoiler alert. And so actually a healthy competition between China and the US for some time, I think, does us all a world of good. It will accelerate continued innovation into the future. So I actually think this is a good thing, and we'll see how it plays out. So those were the end of your predictions on the show, Yaniv, but you actually ended up making a few more on LinkedIn at the beginning of the year. So we might go through some of those as well for a bit of fun. On LinkedIn, you wrote, 2025 will be a good but not great year for startups. The recent boom in public markets will be trickled down to the VC space by mid-2025, and funds will also feel emboldened to call more capital from their LPs. I also believe that many startups will have started to figure out how to use AI to build more efficiently, leading to more efficient use of capital and many excellent growth stories. What do you think, Yaniv? Did this come true?
Yeah, look, I think it mostly came true. So this has been very much a two-speed market in VC. And what's true is if you are a certain type of AI startup, it hasn't been a good but not great year for you. It's been a really bloody great year if you measure that by the ability to raise lots and lots of money at high valuations. Now, I think that may come back to bite a lot of those startups, but it's definitely been a great year for them. And then there's the everybody else. And I think, in a sense, the excitement about AI startups has made it a bit harder for everybody else to raise money. So I would say definitely not a great year. Possibly a good year, but not even a very good year. A sort of like an okay year for everybody else. I think the bit that is coming true, and I'm feeling this myself in my own startup, is that being able to use AI to build more efficiently, leading to more efficient use of capital and many excellent growth stories, I think that's starting to happen. And, we had Peter Walker on from Carter, and, he's talked about the fact that startups are hiring more slowly, that revenue per employee is increasing at these startups. And so, yeah, I do think that AI is starting to make its way into these early stage companies where, again, my experience, it is actually the most valuable at the early stage because it doesn't have to deal with huge amounts of legacy context, whether that is a large code base or whether that is lots of policies and procedures and documentation. You're kind of in a green field, and that is where AI shines. And so I think that takes it from being a kind of okay year back to being a good year for startups that are outside of that AI spotlight.
Yeah, you're talking about the two-speed economy. It's sort of like a tale of two cities. It was the very best of times. It was the worst of times. Look, I think when we think about AI and sort of the center of Silicon Valley and startup fundraising, I think it's been a very, very, very good year. Very, very frothy. And there's been some huge wins, right? You've got Scale AI exiting to Meta. You've got Perplexity growing, 150 million ARR by mid-2025. You've got, every other Y Combinator startup coming out and like massively scaling up their ARR. Huge seed, Series A, funding rounds. This is a very frothy time in the market. 2025 has been very, very good for startups as a category. And again, I think if you're in Silicon Valley where the hottest startups are, the most capital is, the most events, the most investors, the most everything, I think they will tell you, and I know because I lived there for most of the year, this has been some of the hottest action on record. And so, yeah, I would say you actually you undershot this a little bit if you're thinking about sort of the AI startup VC space for 2025. Very, very hot. And so, yeah, it's been a very good year.
Your last prediction that you made, Chris, was that Trump's power will be constrained in practice. You said he has barely a hair's breadth control of the House. That's Congress. There's only so much he can get done.
So this is an interesting one. I would say that in some ways his level of authoritarianism has played out in many of the worst ways that people predicted, right? Military on the streets, people being disappeared, demolishing part of the White House, actively working through the courts to deny people their SNAP benefits so they can eat. The longest shutdown in history, which he's touting as a good thing so that he can dismantle the bureaucratic state. And by the way, Congress doing absolutely nothing about it, enabling him at every turn. So in some ways, his power has been completely unconstrained. And this idea that the House or anyone else is going to constrain him has been false.
Yeah.
But he does continue to be extremely capricious and random in his follow-through. So he will threaten or actually deploy the National Guard and the military in a city, and then it'll sort of like, it's sort of nothing. He doesn't sort of land and expand. He sort of then will, at the end of the month when his right runs out, he sort of rolls it back. There's massive protests, no king's protests, which I did anticipate would turn into violent clashes and the beginning of something much worse, sort of turn into a nothing burger in terms of the pushback. So there's this sort of authoritarianism in fits and starts. He's pushing the Overton window over and over and over and then retreating, pushing it and retreating. There's this big debate about Trump. Is he a genius or is he a child? If you ascribe genius to him, he's sort of pushing the Overton...
Can are those doors?
Both. But he sort of pushes the Overton window and then pulls back, pushes it and rolls back. And so it's either genius or it's capriciousness. And I don't think we know yet still.
Yeah, it is so hard to analyze because what Donald Trump is an attention-seeking machine, right? What does Donald Trump love more than anything else? Being in the news. That is his area of genius. He can constantly get coverage and attention and outrage and coverage and outrage and all of that. And so the amount of sound and fury emanating from the White House is just insane. But then, it is November 2025. American democracy is still somewhat intact. There was just an off-season election or whatever they call it, where the Democrats won most of those elections, which means in some sense they must have been free and fair. Greenland remains independent. Canada remains independent. The tariffs have been bad, but they're up and down and all over the place. And the term taco for Trump always chickens out has come about. There were people who were illegally extradited, who were sent to El Salvador, but then it didn't become part of a broader program. ICE have been scaring people, but they haven't had massive roundups. In fact, I believe deportations are down under Trump compared to under Biden. So yes, that lack of follow-through is a real weakness that is a kind of a saving grace for Trump's worst excesses. Because the truth is he just does not give a shit about anything except two things. And you can see this. One is attention and the other is real estate. What is the thing that he's actually made the most progress on, had the most focus on, is building a ballroom and remodeling the bathroom in the White House, because that is what is close to his heart. The rest of it, he doesn't care about. He just wants the attention. He just wants to play power games. And so you have truly scary people behind him, like Stephen Miller and Stephen Bannon and a bunch of other folks who are genuine, horrible, authoritarian, evil people. And they're trying to push Trump in a certain direction, but they are as frustrated by his lack of focus as the people who were trying to moderate him were frustrated by his lack of focus and his lack of discipline. So, yeah, I mean, the question is, can we survive another 3 years of this chaos? It's starting to look up a little bit, but time will tell.
Yeah, if you take my headline, Trump's power will be constrained, really what I meant is Trump's authoritarian impulses will be constrained. The answer, I think, is yes, but not because of my thinking around the House. It's because he's a man-child who can't control or follow through on anything. So,
yeah.
50-50 on this one. And we'll see how we still got 3/4 of his term to run out. So, or unless he, runs for a third term. So we'll see. We'll see where we land.
Yeah.
All right, the next one on your LinkedIn post was a major stock market correction is coming. Stocks are overvalued, and Donald Trump promises to be an agent of chaos who is unafraid of starting trade wars. The confluence of these two factors means we will see the market drop at least 20% off their highs at some point in 2025. Note, I'm not predicting that this will stay at those levels, although they might. What do you think, Yaniv?
Okay, well, look, technically I was wrong. There was not any point at which markets dropped 20% off their highs at some point in 2025. However, they did drop about 15%. So this was during Liberation Day, when Trump announced all those ridiculous tariffs on unpopulated rocks and that sort of stuff. There was a really significant correction. Stocks were down 15% off their highs. And then they rebounded, which, like I said, I'm not predicting that the stocks will stay at that depressed level. Stocks are now at or near all-time highs. A lot of this is being held up by the AI, you can call it a bubble or just the AI boom. We'll see if it's a boom or a bubble only in hindsight, Chris. So look, I guess I give myself partial marks here. I think what is true, the essence of this was that Trump was an agent of chaos. He was unafraid of starting trade wars. He did start trade wars, and the stock market did correct significantly. However, it did not reach a 20% correction, and it did not stay at those levels.
Hey, I've got some leverage in my portfolio, so I did hit 20% down. I'll give it to you, Yaniv.
Poor baby.
Yeah, but it's corrected nicely. I will say again, I'm being fully transparent with the audience. I will say I've actually drawn back from my margin. I've sold some stocks leading into the end of the year, so that I can sleep a bit better at night. And I do think things are a little frothy for my taste. So I am dialing back a little bit.
A little frothy.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I am expecting another nice correction in the next, let's call it 6 to 12 months. So I think, but we are still powering forward, and we are still early in the AI trade, assuming that things don't freak out from here. So yeah, it was a good prediction, I think. Now, finally, you had a few other predictions here in your post, Yaniv. The one I want to talk about is Bitcoin. Bitcoin will end 2025 above $100,000. And you wrote here, possibly quite a bit over 100,000. It will continue to establish itself as a genuine store of value, cementing its role in the global financial ecosystem. Now, we're not at the end of 2025 yet, but what do you think, Yaniv? We are above 100,000 right now. And where do you think it'll end at the end of December?
Okay, so we've been above 100,000 except for a few very short periods since the beginning of May. So I would say it's found a level above 100,000. It's also interesting, it's sort of been fairly range bound since May. It's basically bounced between 100,000 and 120,000, which is actually less volatile than the stock market, and certainly less volatile than Bitcoin itself has been for most of its history. And so I think, again, that the core prediction here really is that it will continue to establish itself as a genuine store of value, cementing its role in the global financial ecosystem. I think it's cemented, right? Like, whatever you think of crypto, and generally I don't think much of it, as regular listeners will know, Bitcoin is different because it is not really about the underlying technology anymore. It is about the fact that it is that kind of digital gold. Although gold has outperformed Bitcoin this year, that's another story. It is a genuine store of value. And yes, Bitcoin is actually only a little bit above $100,000 now. At the time of recording, it was $103,000, which is, close to a low for the last few months. Do I think it will end the year above 100,000? Probably. But if it's not, it will only be a little bit below. So yeah, I feel this one's looking pretty good. It's been above $100,000 for more than half the year. And so yeah, I think it would take a lot to make Bitcoin crash. I think it would take just as much to make Bitcoin crash as it would take to make the stock market crash. And at that point, you'd say, yes, it has cemented its role in the financial ecosystem and is a reasonably stable asset.
Yeah, for me, Bitcoin's been, partially cemented for at least a few years. And this year, it's certainly, the cement has dried, thanks to Trump and his very sort of crypto-friendly policies and so on. I think by the end of the year, there is a chance that it makes it back up toward the 110, 120 mark. So I do think it'll remain above 100.
Could easily do.
one of the most interesting things I saw about Bitcoin recently was somebody plotted the stock market against Bitcoin instead of against the US dollar. And against that, the stock market has been tanking for years. So, when you denominate the US stock market against the US dollar, it's doing very well. But the US dollar is not doing very well because of its buying power and inflation and so on. And so when you kind of plot it against real buying power of the dollar, or what, worse, when you plot it against the value of Bitcoin, the stock market has been tanking for quite some time. That's interesting.
So you said it was an interesting graph, Chris. You said it was an interesting graph. The truth is, I saw that graph too, and I rolled my eyes so hard that I pulled a muscle. Like, sure, you plot the value of the stock market or the US dollar against a highly performing asset, it won't look good. If you plot the stock market against the Nvidia shares or against Google, it will also look like it's been tanking. But Bitcoin is not a currency. Bitcoin is a store of value, and it is an appreciating asset that has appreciated. And so that plot was basically put out there by crypto maximalist, libertarian, anti-fiat currency, anti-government types to make a point and to fool credulous people. And Chris, I don't think you're a credulous person, so I don't know why you were fooled by that. This is not about the debasing of the US dollar. It's about a speculative asset that has become a store of value and has performed very well. And that is all.
Yeah, I know. I know how skeptical you are about Bitcoin, but
I'm not skeptical about Bitcoin. I'm skeptical about these bros who use the asset appreciation value of Bitcoin to make a false point about the health of the global economy, which is simply not true. And I'm just sick of their bullshit.
The point
is not about being skeptical about crypto. Is being skeptical about crypto grifters who are just trying on their grift.
Yeah, no, this was not from a crypto bro. This was actually one of those videos from one of those ex-Vox guys. I forgot his name right now, but he does some very thoughtful videos about the history of things. And he was talking about the history of money and how money was pegged to gold, or actually originally pegged to silver, and how they started diluting the silver and why the Roman money sort of lost its value, which led ultimately to its demise. And then modern currency was based on gold, and then it became fiat. And then the sort of dilution of the gold storage and all this sort of stuff. So it talked about the correlation between what we think of as money and what that money is backed by, and how as that money gets diluted or unpegged from something real, it can actually lead to debasement, yes, and ultimately the collapse of empires. And when they told the story over history,
I think that's all true, and
it's a
marvelous point that has nothing to do with Bitcoin.
Well, it does, because if you do believe that Bitcoin will become the modern store of value, a sort of pure digital store of value to replace gold, then you do think that the way money was based on gold, you might imagine that all currencies get denominated in Bitcoin. When you untether from USD as the default global currency, you need to tether it to something. And so that something might become Bitcoin. Everything may become denominated in Bitcoin. That is a real possibility. If you think about the new global currency, because the dollar is being debased, China is trying to compete with it, the BRICS countries are trying to compete with it, and that does reshuffle the deck. And people may end up saying, you know what, why don't we just peg to Bitcoin? That may occur. And when you peg to Bitcoin, then other things start to look very different when you're not denominating in USD. That's just a fact. And so you can decide, well, pegging it to Bitcoin is a stupid crypto bro thing. Maybe not. It's all about how you frame value, the comparisons of the values of these things. No one's going to denominate the world in Nvidia stock. They're going to denominate it in gold or in some new BRICS currency, or the Chinese yen, or the USD, or Bitcoin. It's not going to be Nvidia. And so it's a reasonable comparison, or a reasonable thought experiment to think about.
Okay, I think we have to end this conversation before I give myself muscle strain from rolling my eyes again.
Yeah, we can do that. All right. So those were our predictions and how we scored. What do you guys think? Did we score ourselves fairly, or were we too generous or too harsh on ourselves? Let us know in the comments below.
All right. Well, I think that's the pod, Chris. So if people want to follow you while we're taking a bit of a hiatus and keep up with all of your thinking and news about the Startup Podcast too, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on all the social media at Chris Sard, and most especially on LinkedIn or my newsletter, chrissard.com/newsletter. How about you, Yaniv?
I'm on LinkedIn trying to make it a less boring place, and I love getting connection requests from TSP listeners. So hit me up with a connection request. Let me know you come from the pod, and I will happily accept it. Even more important in these times when we're going to be off the air for a few months. Folks, it has been an absolute pleasure being in your ears all year. Wish you a wonderful break when it comes, wonderful holidays, and a happy new year, and we will see you at the other end. Remember, this is a fantastic time to catch up on all the wonderful back catalogue of TSP episodes. So keep listening and give us that momentum to come back in the new year, and we cannot wait for the 2026 season. Have a good one. See you, Chris.
Bye bye.